What's up guys, AD here back with another Destiny Child video, and in today's video everyone, I have a Ragna Burst guide for you all. So hopefully this does help you with our current Ragna Burst event. But before we get started everyone, make sure to leave a like on this video, as well as make sure to subscribe to the channel, and of course make sure to check out channel memberships down below if you're interested in further supporting the channel. But with all of that out of the way, here we are on the Ragna Burst for Burning Passion Anemone in the current Ragna Break event. So I'll be overviewing some team comps I did put together for you all to follow. So let's get started with the Bursters, as the Bursters for this event are very easy to come across, I would say, as you should have more of the general units here from this list, as most of them are staples for the Ragna Break event. So hopefully you guys do happen to have them. We'll start at the top here for slots 1. We do have here Elysian at the top, the new wood type supporter. Of course she is slots 1, and for her effect here we do have all allies max HP plus a certain amount depending on your uncap and ignition level. As for slot 2 here, we have Annie, Pan, Yuna, and Grilla. They do affect all allies attack plus. As for the third slot here, we have Pepita, Maid Citri, Rosanna, and Haket. These units here do have all allies, all skill damage defense plus a certain percentage. And for slots 4 here, we do have Raga Raja. Slots 4 will always be the previous Ragna Break unit, so make sure to have this unit around at least for the next Ragna Burst. And we do have here Raga Raja. Her effect here is all allies weak point attack final blow plus a certain percentage. As for the Soul Carta boxes here, we do have slots 5 being the new Soul Carta, and this effect here does have all allies skill gauge charge speed plus a certain percent. As for the final slot here, we do have 3 Soul Cartas featuring the End of a Long Wait, Rest in Peace, and Little Succubus Snack Time. And for the Burster buff here, you will receive all allies recovery amounts, regen, heal, plus a certain percentage. So that'll do it for the Bursters. Now let's move on to the boss info for this event, and here we are with the Burning Passion Anemone. As for her tap skill here, we have deal damage to 4 enemies, priority high skill gauge, inflict water balloon, dealing 1100 bonus damage upon being attacked, removed and skill gauge reset after 28 seconds or upon taking 2 attacks 2 times, and time based buff blast, remove last time based buff, then deal damage based on its effect type by a factor of 900, and grants debuff accuracy plus 25% to self for 16 seconds long. As for the slide skill here, we have Judgment, dealing damage 2 times to 4 enemies, priority debuff, skill cooldown plus 3, and inflict water snake, skill gauge charge amounts minus 40%, and 600 damage when attacked by water type enemies, wood types minus 40%, fire types plus 40% for 20 seconds, and drive gauge plus 250 added to self. As for the drive skill here, Quick Trinity, dealing damage to all enemies, skill gauge blast 350 bonus damage in proportion to skill gauge and skill gauge reset, and buff blast, remove the last applied buff, then deal damage based on its effect type by a factor of 350, and skill gauge charge amounts plus 30% for self for 30 seconds long. As for the leader buff here, we have debuff evasion plus 40%, and a debuff duration cut minus 60%, and all skill defense minus 80%, except for weak point attributes for all allies. As for the battle buff here on Anemone, we do have the first of the 3 being boss skill gauge charge speed up. Bosses disable petrify, silence, confuse, stun, and sleep effect, and time-based debuff immunity. And for the last one here, we do have bosses critical damage defense up and defense up. Now moving on to the team recommendations I do have for you all here everyone. We'll start out with this first team, and we'll be using the same core of units throughout most of these team compositions, and this would be Polar Pepita, Elysian, Citri, and Yuna. Now the final slot can be swapped depending on your needs, as well as Elysian if you do happen to need more survivability. But for this first team composition here, we do have 5-star Polar Pepita, 5-star Elysian, Citri, Yuna, and Aurora. Of course, for this team composition, you will run Elysian leader skill, and for the drive skill here, you will want to go with Citri first, Elysian second, and follow up with Yuna drive third. As for the skill order, you could go with Pepita on slide, Elysian on slide tap tap, depending depending on your ignition and uncap level, you'll probably want to stick to slide and 2 taps. But if you do have her at a fully ignited status, you could add 1 additional tap, as you can see here I do have for myself. As for Citri here, you can run her on 1 slide and 2 taps, and depending on your needs, you can also add an additional tap to her if you would like to. As for Yuna here, you should run her on slide and 2 taps. If you do happen to have her ignited to a certain extent, you can run her on slide tap. And for Aurora here, you should run her on slide only. Next up here, everyone, we do have pretty much the same team composition, but we do swap out Aurora for Newbie Mona. So let's say you do happen to have Newbie Mona more invested into, since she is a far more flexible unit than Aurora is. You can definitely use her in the Ragna Burst. And we do have here the same leader of Elysian, as well as the drive skill order of Citri into Elysian drive and ending off with Yuna drive. As for the skill order, just as I mentioned, the same as the previous team composition. And for Newbie Mona here, you'll run her on slide only, as unfortunately her tap skill doesn't really do much in the Ragna Burst event, since Anemone doesn't have a damage over time ability. As for the third team composition, everyone, we do have pretty much the same core like mentioned before, with Polar Pepita, Elysian, Citri, and Yuna. And for the final slots here, we do have Gorilla being substituted instead of Newbie Mona and Aurora. Now Gorilla is a great sidekick alongside Polar Pepita, so you could consider running this unit. And for the skill order here, you'll still want to run the same drive order of Citri into Elysian drive and ending off with Yuna drive. As for the same skill order here, you'll want to prioritize, of course, the same as the previous 2 team comps, depending on your ignited state. And for Gorilla here, you'll run her on slide only. Next up here, everyone, we do have the same core yet again, but with the addition of Anemone, as Anemone does happen to have some great use here in Ragna Burst as of now. Now in the future, this may change with the introduction of a different unit, but since Anemone did receive some amazing buffs to her tap and slide skill, and she does also have healing in her kit, she is very helpful in the later stages of the burst events. So the same core here of Pepita, Elysian, Yuna, and Citri. As for the skill order here, of course, the same as we did mention before. You'll run Citri drive into Elysian and end off with Yuna drive, Elysian leader, and the same skill order. Besides for Anemone, you'll want to run 1 slide and maybe 2 tap skills here, as in the later stages you will be taking a ton more damage, as Anemone's kit does scale, of course, in the later levels. So I would suggest you all to use 1 slide and 2 taps here on Anemone, so you can take advantage of the tap skill and its healing. Now if you could ignite your Anemone, this would be a great option to do so, as she's very versatile across all areas of Destiny Child, and she will be very amazing for the Ragna Burst until eventually a new unit, Sarasu, does get released, as she will eventually become a staple wood type supporter for the burst side of Destiny Child. But we're unsure of her release timing, as the global schedule has been pretty much all over the place. But for now, Anemone is a great option. As for the next team composition here, everyone, we actually do change out one of the units in Elysian for Neptune. If you do happen to need more survivability in Ragna Burst, as if you're dying, you definitely should change up your team comp and prioritize survivability firsthand before damage. Now we do have here the team composition of Polar Pepita, Yuna, Maid Citri, Neptune, and Anemone. Now you'll be running the leader skill of Citri here, as you do want to take advantage of the skill gauge charge amount here. And for the drive order here, you'll want to run Citri into Neptune drive and end off with Yuna drive. Now for the Neptune drive here, you'll want to time this accordingly with the boss's drive skill. If you can, definitely manually use the drive skills of your team comp, as it does provide far more consistency than the AI would. So definitely follow this drive order for this specific team comp. And then we do have here the skill order, still pretty standard. You'll want to run Polar Pepita on slide, Yuna here on slide tap tap, depending on your ignition level. Now for myself, I run her on slide tap. As for Citri here, 1 slide 2 taps or 1 slide 3 taps. As for Neptune here, you'll run her on slide only, and Anemone 1 slide 2 taps or 1 slide 1 tap if you are surviving. Now for another unit substitute, if you guys do happen to need more survivability, you can definitely swap out a unit like Anemone for the wood type healer in Haket here, as she is very amazing for the Ragna Burst. So if you do need even more heals than you do have with Neptune and Anemone on the Ragna comp, then definitely sub in Hakets as she should be able to keep you alive for the entire time. And of course, just swap out units accordingly based on what you do have available. Now the core would of course be Pepita, Yuna, Citri, and Elysian, but if you don't have Pepita right now, definitely swap her out for a different wood type attacker, and do the same with your other supports. If you don't happen to have Elysian, make sure to use Neptune, and if you don't happen to have Yuna, make sure to use Lupin. And for made Citri here, you could use other wood type supporters such as Wodan, Venus, etc. So that'll pretty much do it for the Ragna Burst guide here on the channel for Burning Passion Anemone. Make sure to let me know in the comment section below if this video was helpful to you at all, and if you do happen to have any suggestions of yourself, make sure to leave them down below in the comments, as I would love to provide more information here on the Ragna Burst, as personally I'm still a newcomer to this mode as I've just started to prioritize it. So make sure to let me know in the comments if you do happen to have any suggestions of yourself. But before you go everyone, make sure to leave a like on this video, as well as make sure to subscribe to the channel, and of course check out channel memberships down below if you're interested in further supporting the channel for a small cost, and in return you'll receive some channel perks as well as some cute emotes for the comments. But with all of that being said, I'll see you all in the next Destiny Child video. As always, thank you all so much for watching.